Danielle.
Hi, Case.
What's doing?
So sorry about that. Hi, Case.
I'm happy to be here.
Felt weird. Welcome to Bonus Sesh, everybody.
I'm having such a fun time doing these.
Me too. We get to slow down for a minute and not feel like, oh God, we got to cover everything and everyone and make everybody happy and make ourselves happy. And sometimes it's a lot of pressure to have a podcast.
I know. And I feel like these episodes allow us to do this great line that Matt McConkey said one time, which we love, which is to take a deep dive into the shallow end of pop culture, of our thoughts.
Yeah.
Of our self-help routines that are clearly not helping.
No. Well, they're helping, but then they are not.
Yeah.
They only go so far.
Danielle, you're in a great pair of overalls today.
Yeah. Now, you know what?
Speaking of failures. I'm kidding.
Miss June Diane had once said on the podcast, so all of you have heard this, that overalls are not an old lady's game. Meaning she doesn't like to see kind of like women in pigtail, speaking of Margaret in pigtails and long hair, things that aren't.
Here's the thing, though. I think, first of all, you look amazing and adorable in them, and you're in a cute striped top. And it's not like you're pairing it with pigtails and a hat with one of those little
propellers?
Propeller on the top.
And a huge lolly.
Yeah. You look very cute. I think you look adorable. Someone else who dresses like that and I think pulls it off is Carol Radziwill will dress.
Yeah. Agree. But sometimes June does not like the way Carol dresses. I'm okay when she sort of does a younger look, even though she is a woman in her 50s.
Look, do I think we're nearing the end of the line? Yes, but she says that herself. She knows we only have 2 more summers.
But as April pointed out, June says she doesn't like a baseball cap on a woman, but she has worn many herself.
Wow.
So we don't always.
Way to call her out.
Yeah. Sorry. So we don't always do what we say, and I know I do the same. Sometimes we dislike in other people what we see in ourselves, and that can happen too.
Danielle, today's episode, we wanted to focus on a subject, and this was actually April's idea, and I think it's a good subject to dive into, which is simply the word failure.
And it's a word I know so well.
As do I. It's the only word I know.
Yeah, I'm used to it. I
comfortable with it?
Yes. Oh, yeah. It's like a warm bath.
In some ways, welcoming.
Yeah, because I'm so used to it. I assume it's personality. I assume it's traits. I expect it you expect someone at the door. Knock, knock, who is there? Of course it's you, failure.
Yeah.
I know you, my friend.
Now, it's funny because I do consider you and I would say successful in our realms, but I do think, and obviously some of our stories might have to do with the entertainment business, but it's unbelievable as life goes on to me, just how many knocks and failures you have along the way.
I know, you really do have to put it in perspective because as much as we have success now and are at this point, and I say at this point because it could change anything, but making a living doing something that we want to do, which again is a huge success in this world, but it's taken failures all the time. It's
almost under this umbrella of triumph is just so many failures.
Yeah, just a long line every day. As much as we fail, we've tried 10 more times than that.
If not 100 more times. Also, even in motherhood, I see these just micro failures every day. You're just why did I? Oh, God. Okay, moving on.
Yeah, and when you think you've got it, you don't. It slips away.
Some days I'm wow, I'm a great mom.
Yeah, and then you see
that other people aren't as good as me.
And then you see another mom and their child, and you're like, oh,
I'm she actually makes something instead of having my assistant's assistant go get cookies for a bake sale.
Or look, when I dare to go on Instagram and see what other moms are making for their children's lunch, that is secret cutting. That is you know what I mean? When you cut yourself to feel something.
We know.
That is what looking at what other moms are bringing for lunch to me, because that is a place where I just can't get it right.
Right.
And I'm giving my child what I think is healthy lunches, and then I'm seeing the amount of vegetables and fruits going into other mothers' lunches.
And not even that, the vegetables are doing a tableau.
Yeah, oh, completely.
It's the Last Supper they've recreated out of egg whites and carrots.
And strips of cheese. Wow. And it's not just a cheese stick. It's something they've milked themselves.
Speaking of failure right off the bat, I just was reminded of one that happened just this morning.
What happened?
With my son in snacks. So my son had a preschool interview today, and I've never had one of those with him. Oh. And I baked blueberry muffins as a bribe that I made before. I gave him one, and it backfired on me. He was sugared out. By the time we got there, he was crashing.
And burning.
And burning. And just like a monster. Like the teachers would be like, how old are you? He's like, no. And I was like, you know what? I deserve this. Because I'm a failure.
No, I've done the same. We had a preschool interview recently too, and it went gangbusters. Couldn't have gone better. And so I think I might have told you this, but I took my daughter out for a victory lap, basically.
Yeah.
Took her back to the school for they were having some all school event. And I was like, let them get a load of her in a social situation.
See how well she flies.
Yeah. Let's take her out for a test run, show the other parents what I got.
What they're missing.
What they're missing out on. Let them see a winner.
What that actually looks like. Instead of their pieces of shit kids.
I got cocky. And my daughter, not even just at this event, but in front of head of admissions.
Almost like she waited till she came by.
Yeah, she came over and the head of admissions comes over, just lovely woman, nice as can be. And my daughter starts climbing a wall and balking like a chicken. And I didn't know what to do. I froze and I pretended it wasn't happening.
You have to. I mean, you have to. You know, these are tough moments.
Yeah, it was just that's on me. That was me. And then my husband said, we should have quit while we were ahead.
Yeah, and that's right.
Yeah, so that's on me.
I'm thinking of some professional failures.
Okay,
and I think I have a real, I want to say it's an elephant in the room, but that's another failure because people don't know me well enough to know that this was a failure. Possibly, but I would say Saturday Night Live I consider to be a failure.
You do.
Now others would say you got on it, as my husband always tells me, that's huge. I'm like, no. It's a failure.
Now, why do you think?
And I do not feel better to have loved than lost.
No, I know. I have a girlfriend. My writing partner Donna always says that. She's like, no, I don't want to know the sweet taste of success. It's worse.
Oh God, no. Or I don't want to be around everyone else enjoying the sweet taste as you sit on a bench and eat Godiva pretzels from downstairs of 30 Rock. Just a failure. It's one of those things where I remember getting on the show was the highest high, and truly it was like a roller coaster that ticks down every day. The high was getting it, but emotionally I was just simply, when I tell you not ready. It was really tough. You have to partner up with people to write. And I just remember walking the halls at 3 a.m. on a Tuesday while they would get McDonald's for everyone. And none of the actors, of course, would dare eat McDonald's. And I put an order in for myself every week, only to gain 30 pounds.
Oh.
30 pounds in a year, knocking on doors and saying, excuse me, anyone want to write with me?
And what would they say?
Come back later.
Oh, Casey.
And then I would retreat to Daryl Hammond's office because he was an impressionist and never there. And he told me, quote, you can smoke in my office if you want. And that seemed like the only kind of positive affirmations I was getting. So I took up smoking. But at 30 Rock, it's such a high building that you can only open the windowsill 2 inches because they're afraid you're going to jump. And I think that was really smart. And I would smoke, but your room is enveloped in smoke because it's just and it's so cold that your hands are shaking with cold and just smoking. And that was the whole experience to me.
I'm sorry, Casey.
It's okay. The funny thing was it was encapsulated. This isn't funny, actually. It's quite devastating. But so when you're done, one day I'd processed that, I wasn't on the show anymore. In some ways, actually, if I was honest, very relieved. It wasn't the right place for me, but I got this box in the mail, truly just on my doorstep. And when I opened it, it was said from 30 Rock. And I'm like, oh, they sent me back all my stuff, which I was wondering. I had a lot of pictures of my family. Namely, I was in a stage, it had only been a year since my mom died. So I had a lot of big solo shots of her, which people found odd. They were like, oh, who's this woman? In these 4 glamour shots, on your desk, really weird. They had thrown all the bottles of alcohol in that. Maybe I've already told you the story. I'm so sorry. That hosts had given us. Each week, hosts would give you a really nice bottle of. They'd thrown them all in together, no bubble wrap, and it was just an explosion of liquor, glass, and my family photos.
Oh.
And I really thought, this is that experience is in this box. I had to just pick it up and walk it to the trash.
Wow, Casey, I'm so sorry. I had another friend, and I won't say her name.
Kristen Wiig?
No, she actually wasn't a friend. She was more of an acquaintance, and she was on SNL for years and was considered, a success there. Yeah. And she said the last year that she was there, after they offered to renew her contract, she started to cry. She didn't want it. Wow. She said it was just every
the funny
year.
Thing is, even the people that are quote unquote succeeding are having a really hard time.
Yeah, she said she started to cry, and it was such a relief to say, or I don't know if I can't remember if she was let go or let herself go, but she said every year she would get the contract and dread it.
It's crazy because of course, I'm so grateful to have had the opportunity. I truly, truly am. And I did have some like little private wins and some public wins. But there is this weird thing of like, I don't know. It's also kept me from things. It's people are like, oh, we don't want to see her because she was on Saturday Night Live because she was too broad. But I want to be like, I was fired from there. They honestly didn't think I was good.
I wasn't broad enough.
Yes. So they did not care for me. I'm not talented. Please see me.
Oh, that reminds me of a failure of mine.
Tell.
And maybe have I told this on the podcast before? It's hard to know. We've done about 100 episodes, so it's hard to know what we've told. But I used to be on a little show called Best Week Ever.
I don't think you've told this.
What?
I don't think you've told this one.
And I got on because our good dear friend Paul Scheer, who has been lovely to me over my career, had recommended me to be on the show. And he knew I knew a lot about pop culture and loved to talk and blah, blah,
This is your milieu.
Yeah, it was right for me. And so I went on the show and they started calling me, to come in every week. And every week you would get paid like a nominal fee.
$1.
Like 100 maybe, but like that doesn't go very far in Los Angeles.
Especially
like an
you're
adult.
on TV, you would think.
And then they would send you the topics like 2 days in advance, and I would write. Like it taught me how to be a joke writer because I would spend all my time writing for these. And I was lucky if I would get 1 to 2 jokes on, but I would write 100 jokes. Like no joke, and the topics would change. So you would prepare like a whole topic and then they'd throw that topic out right beforehand because, like Janet Jackson's boob showed at the, whatever, so it was just like, it kept changing it was hard work. I thought it was hard work. But again, I do think it taught me how to write jokes in that sort of way. And every week they would kind of call people. And if you didn't get called, that means you weren't on that week. Like they would just not call you.
Had that happened to you a couple times?
Yeah, it happened to me a couple times. So I figured I'd do something about it. I was like, I'm going to take this bull by the horns.
I'm looking away.
And I was like, I'm going to start calling them and just ask them, what's my time for next week?
Flip the script.
Yeah,
Take control.
Flip the script. That's what I did. And it started working. This poor, lovely guy. No, it started working. This poor, lovely guy, Norman, didn't know what to do with me. He was like, okay, I guess, yeah, Friday at 3. And I was like, great, I'll see you then.
I feel like I'm already here.
Yeah, he would, but I would never get the call. Like some people like Paul and others were always like,
they had a standing time.
Yeah, they sort of, or they were like, they would get the email. And I was always dragging myself. I said to my husband at the time, who was my boyfriend at the time, like, I will make them tell me no. And so like, I guess that's what I did. And it continued for a good 4 or 5 months.
Okay.
Yeah. And I was
strategy.
doing it. It was a good strategy. And then one day.
Until it wasn't.
I kept calling Norman. And I wasn't getting the call back. And finally Norman called me and he's like, Danielle, you don't have to call anymore. We're not going to be using you. And I thought it would make me feel better to hear, because a lot of times what Best We Could Ever do, they just stop calling you.
Sure. And you had said, I will make them tell me no, but you're never expecting
I never expected them to tell me. And I got off the phone shell-shocked because I don't think Norman had ever uttered those words before.
Was Norman a producer or an assistant?
Unclear. Sweet. He was lovely. And you could tell it pained him to have to say this.
I'm sure, because if anything, you had been making Norman's job easier.
Yes. I had been like, Norman, this is happening, whether you guys like it or not. I'm showing up.
Normie. I like your house, Norman.
Yeah. And that was the end of that. Oh, and I also remember I would tour. I would go on Best Week Ever tours.
Okay, well, you're in the mix.
This was before. So I was kind of in the mix. I would tour a little bit, and they were really lovely. And
like, Norman, I brought my own plane ticket.
Yes, and it would always be like 3 guys and a girl, and I was like the girl because I think Jessie Klein couldn't do it anymore.
Okay, but this all sounds good.
And I was like, you know what? I wanted like another funny friend of mine on the tour, and so I was like, you should use my friend Jessica.
To add people.
I was stupid. I said you should use my friend Jessica St. Clair. Well, when I got fired, they started using Jessica St. Clair. So, I guess my recommendation was heard.
I guess they did listen to you
I guess
about
they
that.
did.
They respected you enough to use your friend.
My recommendation, and she did well. She went on. She never had to call in, and she was always. She never had to call. I don't believe. I should ask her.
I heard her complaining about how much she had to do it.
Yeah,
it became a burden.
It seemed to really fit her. They seemed to want her. So that was a failure on so many levels.
How did you process it? How did you deal with it?
It was tough. I had to not watch it anymore. I had to take it off of the TV. Because I would watch, I used to watch every week. Like, did I get a joke on? Did I get a joke on? And it was always tough. And I should have seen the handwriting on the wall when I would actually go there and then wouldn't be featured in the episode. So it was what it was, but it was, I took it rough and I manifested itself by just having to be like, wow, I remember it was a low. It felt really shitty because it was the only job I had at that time that wasn't waitressing. I was also hostessing and waitressing and teaching, and it was the only job that felt like something I could do. I felt right for it too. I felt right for the job. So to feel right for the job and for them to say no, you're not.
Well, I'm sorry, but I have to admit you're doing Best Week Ever times a million now on this podcast.
Look who's on the air. And look who's not. Well, I'm on the podcast. But
on the airwaves.
Yeah, sure. So anyway, that was a professional failure.
Danielle, I'm so sorry.
Thank you.
That's a tough one.
Yeah, it was tough. And then I remember one time Paul Scheer and I were out because he was the face of Best Week Ever. He was
Best Week Ever. It was Paul Week Ever.
Yeah, it was Paul Week Ever. And we were out at a restaurant and someone said to Paul, "Hey, you're on Best Week Ever," some drunk guy. And Paul was like, yeah, I am. And she is too, pointing at me. And the guy goes, "No," about me. As if to say, no, that's not true.
He's like, I may be drunk. I'm not stupid.
Yeah. It's I'll show you my pay stubs. So, yeah. So that was a failure.
Wow.
Kiss?
What about relationships?
Yeah.
I have a few in the rear view.
I would love to hear one of yours, Case.
I have a few failures. As you know, I've dated about 17 Pauls.
Yes, you sure have.
Also my father's name. And they all ended
horribly. What did your therapist say about that?
She had a field day with that one. But as you know, there's other things we're working on, like why I still suck my thumb. Anyway. So the funny thing, not funny, but I have a lot of girlfriends who are such sweet people that when they tell me about their breakup stories, it's always from the perspective of can you fucking believe this guy did this to me? He fucking dicked me over. It's so terrible. And we're commiserating. You're such a catch. Mm-hmm. Well, it was a bit the opposite. In my situations, I was always a monster.
Were you?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Everyone's always whoa. Ooh.
How, you did that to him? How?
Terrible things in my past, high school and college boyfriends, just rampant cheating. That not after college. That wasn't an issue, but just bad behavior, acting out in a way that is shocking. In high school, just one little thing.
Yes, please.
I was so in love with this guy. He started dating another girl. I've spoken on him in another bonus Sesh show. He started dating an older girl, and I wanted to get him back. I was also very big on revenge, and still am.
Are you still? Good to know.
Well, if someone wrongs me, I'll write a letter and post it in their building, so everyone sees what they've done. I'm up to stuff.
Yes, which is honestly one of the qualities I appreciate about you, unless I'm on the receiving end. But hopefully
you might be, But for instance, I was I'm going to get him back and make him think I started hooking up with someone else. Now I wasn't hooking up with anyone, of course. So I pretended, and I figured it was such delicate, sensitive information that I could pretend that I'd hooked up with this guy, Dave, on the baseball team. He was older than me. Never gone out with this guy. He barely knew me. Mm-hmm. And I said that he had gone down on me, which no one had even done that.
So that was the one you picked?
Yeah, this was language outside of my purview. I had never done that with the boyfriend that I was trying to get back at. So I thought this would really hurt him. So I was called him in confidence, my old boyfriend. I was I just want you to know, because I think you should hear it from me. I have done this act with another guy, and I just wanted you to hear it. And he was really upset. He was crying.
Really? So you felt great.
I felt great. Cut to the next day. I'm walking down to get some Skittles from the vending machine, and the bell rings. So I was never in class. And everybody starts coming out, the old upperclassmen from a room, and I see this girl who dear friend Barry Sacker, she's running out and she goes, "Oh my God," to me. She goes, Did you tell everyone Dave Shamwitz went down on you? She goes, the whole English class knows.
What?
He had told people. So then I'm like, no, it can't get to Dave. He'll refute this. But it did get to Dave. And everyone knew I was a fucking liar, Camille. So embarrassing. So that was a fail.
And what did the guy who hadn't gone down on you say?
So we went to the park and sat on a bench, and he literally ripped me a new one to the point that I have, like, he ripped me tip to tails, stern to
Bow.
titty to clitty.
Oh, that's my favorite thing you've ever said.
He took me downtown. He's like, how dare you? And he was such a great guy. He's like an urban planner now. He's like, how dare you embarrass me and knowingly try to hurt me with information that is false? You let me cry. I mean, it was not great. And I had to just sit there and take it. So that was a fail.
Yeah, that's a fail. That's a big fail.
Yeah. What about you, Dee?
Well, here's a fail.
Besides your failure from Miss Spanish.
Miss Spanish River, which is in another episode.
That's a known failure.
That was a big failure. Woo, still living with that. Still living and loving with that. Okay, so this is actually the Mr. Spanish River from the year before.
Everything goes back to...
It all comes back to Mr. and Miss Spanish River. So I had a really big crush on this guy, Ross, who also happened to live in my neighborhood. I loved him. And he acknowledged me. He knew I existed. And I was obsessed with him. And he was like on the football team, and he was super cute, but he was also super smart. And I lived in my neighborhood. He had like his mom and dad, like everything. He had like a hot older brother, a cute younger sister, like just seemed like a dream. Everyone called him Bubba. It was a dream.
That's a Southern dream.
Yeah. And one day he was in the car in front of me. We lived in the same neighborhood, so we lived right across from the high school. So he accidentally wasn't looking behind him when he was backing up, and he backed up into my car.
You were in the car?
I was in the car. Okay. In the car. This was a dream come true.
Oh, this is the best case scenario.
Dream come true. So it was, he was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. And I was like, hi, it's me. So I was like, well, this is our meet cute. This is where it starts. We're going to tell the kids about this. So he was like, I'm so sorry. Are you okay? I was like, no, I'm fine. But my car had to be taken into the shop. And so he said, I can take you to and from things if you need. Like if we're,
things, plural?
like school or whatever.
Not
like I can do that. Home. Yeah. Like I can, take you to school or whatever.
What a guy.
Yeah. A gent. A love.
Yeah.
So one day we were both decorating. We were in pep rally decorations, and we both stayed late one night. And he was like,
that
"Hey,"
sounds good.
And I was like, "Hey, Ross, can you take me home tonight? Like, I don't have my car, and it'll be late."
At your hand.
Yeah. And he was like, "Yeah, sure, I'll take you home tonight." And I was like, "This is it. This is the dream." And so he comes to get me. It's 11 o'clock. We're exhausted from streamers and putting up balloons. And he's Mr. Spanish River. So he's had a lot of things to be, like the emceeing of the pep rally.
He's accountable for a lot.
Yeah. So he's like, okay, Danielle, I'm going to take you home. And, Kristen's going to come home too. And I was like, oh, no, this was the most gorgeous girl in our school. Legs for days.
No, was she Mrs. Spanish River?
No, she was she was beyond that. Yeah, she didn't need that. She didn't need a title because she was that pretty. I had to have a title, because otherwise people wouldn't pay attention. I feel like, why pay attention to her? Oh, she's Miss Spanish River. Kristen didn't need it. She was gorgeous.
Even her name.
Yeah, Kristen, beautiful. I've never seen someone she looks like a woman, and I looked like a child. I think I still had clear braces.
Were you wearing the overalls you're wearing now?
Probably. No, I might have been in my uniform, my cheerleading uniform.
Well, that's promising.
On a certain type of person. But I hadn't quite developed yet. And so so Kristen, of course, gets shotgun, and Danielle is in the back. He's like, I'm going to take Kristen home first, I guess.
Right, because it doesn't really make sense for Kristen to be in the back.
And she had lived sort of further away. And also, so it didn't make sense for him to take her home first. And so, it made sense for him to take her home first. So we get to her house, and they're talking in the front. And I'm just sort of watching them on their date, basically. They're flirting.
You're in the car.
I'm in the back like a child. And I am watching them this pitter patter, this flirtation in front of me, and I'm dying. I'm dying inside. And then they get to her house, and he's like, "Can I get your number to Kristen?"
And you're hearing all this?
And he's like, "Danielle, there's a piece of paper back there and a pen. Can you jot this down for me?" And I was like, okay.
And you did?
And I jotted down Kristen's number for Ross. And I handed it to her and him.
You should have put your own number.
I should have, but I couldn't think on the fly. And then Kristen walked off and I got in the front seat and he was like, well, thanks for doing that. And then we sat in silence.
Thanks for doing
on the way to my house. And he never asked me out.
Oh, that's
a failure. That was a failure. So now my car's a wreck and so is my social life.
Danielle, that's a tough one.
Yeah, that was rough,
Hearing you fail involving a car, I have a very brief one.
Yes, please.
Of course, involving the same gentleman. Oh, no. Well, I loved him so much just before we started dating, and he too was picking me up. He was the manager of our field hockey team, which is just a fake title for guys that get to just like carry the equipment and ride in the bus. Uh-huh. And somehow he had said, I'll come pick you up. And I was so flustered, so flustered. I was so excited. And there was another guy there that had been in the front seat, but the two of them got out to like say hi to me. So I'm walking towards the car and I'm like, oh, you know what? Like they're in the front. I'll get in the back. I'll climb into the back. I open the passenger door, I push down the front seat, and I climb into the back, and they're staring at me, and it's a 4-door. What happened? I was so flustered.
I don't even know how one climbs in the back.
I literally was like cranking down the seat and just climbed back there, and they're like, oh, there was another door.
You're just wedging yourself.
I was flustered. That was a failure. Yeah, this was
Wow. Okay.
Wow, so many failures.
So many failures.
But luckily, they've all gotten us to the perfect lives that we live today.
The husbands and the careers that we wouldn't have had without.
Yes, and the children.
Have you had a text fail?
Have I had a text fail? April asks.
I've had an accidental email fail.
What did you do?
June and I knew a guy in New York who was a musician, and when we sold our first show... That night, we saw him at a party, and he came up to me and was like, he had this one really cool song, which I really liked and had complimented him on. But he wasn't like a known guy, and he goes, you've got to use this song in your show. Like, please, would you consider using the song? But it was just kind of like premature in that, like, we'd never sold anything happen that night. Mm-hmm. So the next morning he follows up with me with this like long email that's like, hey, here's the song. I don't know if you need to call like it was just a lot.
Yeah.
For
He's putting it himself in your way.
So I forwarded it to June and I write, can you fucking believe this guy?
Oh, okay.
I'm like, what the fuck? Like we just sold. It's so sad.
Oh,
I like your song, but come on. And I sent it to him.
How did that work itself
I
out?
was in a Kinko's on 23rd and 6th when I realized.
I've been at that Kinko's.
Oh, yeah, it's so
I've
dark.
been at that one.
I screamed. I stood up. I pushed my chair back and I screamed to everyone at the Kinko's, does anybody know how to get an email back from AOL? Does anybody know? And everybody just looked at me passively. And someone like mumbled that you couldn't. So then I come up with the most cockamamie excuse to try to get out of it that June is still very upset about. I don't even tell her this. Like she's not even involved in this. That's how I'm sweating. I'm crying. I call this guy and I'm like, listen, we'll call him Jim. I'm like, Jim, he hasn't gotten the email yet. I'm like, you're about to see an email that is incredibly rude to you. But here's the thing. I go, I just need you to back me up on this, Jim, because June is such a controlling partner. I go, she's so controlling. So here's what I was doing. I wanted her to have like a paper trail. I wanted her to see that like I wasn't making any decisions without her. So when you asked, and I, of course, want to use your song, I had to make it look like I thought it was really stupid so that she could feel in control, like, and come to this idea on her own.
Wow! And did he buy it?
I don't think so. It was too cockamamie. And we never spoke again. I was like, June's a monster, so please back me up. I was like, we're in this together. And we never spoke again.
I think you got off easy.
I think so. I'm just a nasty little woman.
Oh. Well, I have another one, a relationship one, and I've spoken of this slightly on the show, but I'll just kind of like dig in. Oh no, well, there's kind of two real quick, but then I was dating a guy. He was not as into me as I was into him, and he was, basically my first. He was, it's not great. He was my first. He was a bad guy, and then he charged me to help me move. And I think I've talked about this on the podcast before, that he was helping me move into apartments in New York City, one to another. And then at the end, it was like, and I was like, thank you so much. He was like, okay, that'll be $100.
Oh my God. And you were still together?
Still together. And then he broke up with me.
And then said, and that'll be $500.
Yeah, like all my friends were like, Danielle, that's a really bad sign. Because I was like, is that weird? And everyone was like, for sure. And I was like, I'm going to ask some more people.
You're like, no,
yeah, like I gave him my virginity. I paid him $100, and then he broke up with me.
Yeah,
it's
and you're like, they don't know him like
the
I do.
trail of our relationship. And
it's a tough dots.
Yeah, tough. That was a failure. That was a big failure. But now I hear he's a yoga instructor.
So he's also failed. Wow.
Yeah. So that
Danielle.
was a rough.
This has been a great episode, but also very sad.
Yeah, I feel sorry for both of us.
I do too. I do
How
too.
have we made it this far?
I don't know. Well, thanks for sharing.
Thank you,
Danielle.
Casey.
Bye.
Bye.
Premium.